Hi guys. Topic for today is arguments. All right. So what are arguments? Arguments is the same like variables. When we need to store any values, we can use arguments. Okay. Um, but additionally, arguments have some specific directions. Okay. In, out, in and out. For example, if you want to store data inside your workflow, then we will use the in argument. If you want to send data outside the workflow, like from one workflow to another workflow, then we will use out direction. Okay, so arguments, basically we use arguments to send data from one workflow to another workflow, and also when we need to reuse our workflow, arguments are very helpful. Okay, so today I'll give you a small demonstration, just give you a small practical, just to understand how we can work with arguments. All right, so let's jump into studio. Okay, we have two workflows now, workflow 1 and workflow 2. Uh, we have nothing inside workflow 1 and workflow 2. Let's create some data. As we know, when we store some value, we can use argument and we can use variable as well. Let's use argument today. Um, so how we can create arguments? Okay, we can create the same as we created variables. But for arguments, we will use the argument panel. Let's click on argument panel, and let's say we want to use your values inside the workflow. Okay, you don't want to send data to another workflow, so in that case we will use indirection, and we need to understand the we need to follow the naming conventions as well. So when we using the uh, values, when we using the variables or arguments inside the workflow, it's the same workflow, so we will use, when we use an indirection, we put the in name in front of the name. Okay, in, and let's say you want to store weekdays, let's say you want to store Sunday. Okay, so in that way we will use that one, and the direction is in. We check the directions in, out, in and out, and properties. And the argument type, it's the same like the variable types, so we are storing the string value, and in direction supports the default value. But when we work with out direction, it doesn't support the default value. So now we are because we are working in workflow 1, so we just using this value inside only this workflow. We don't want to send the um, send the data in workflow 2. Okay, all right, and let's assign the value. Let's put the value, and I am Sunday. Okay, let me show it. Just drag and drop method box activity, and in Sunday, just run the workflow. I'm Sunday. Okay, see, the value has been stored. Okay, let's say you wanna, we have workflow 2 and we have nothing inside, and you want to send this value from one workflow to workflow 2. Okay, so in that case we will use out direction. As I told you, out direction doesn't support the default value, so we need to assign that value inside the designer panel. Alright, so when we're using out direction, we need to check the naming convention as well. We need to put out, okay, and out Sunday, and Sunday. Okay, now let's save it. say we don't have any value, but we want to use that value in workflow 2. So to use that, we will use the invoke code activity workflow 1. Just drag and drop the workflow 1. If we check the import arguments here, so we have only one argument now. It is out direction. See, when we get data from, even from Excel, even from website, we need to store that data. We need to store that value somewhere. In last chapter, I explained you how we store the values. We store them in a variables. In same way, when we get data from one workflow to workflow 2, we need to store them as well. So we need to create a variable to store the value of out Sunday. Let's create the variable. How is to create the variable? By pressing Ctrl K. Just give the meaningful name Sunday. Let's check if we got the values. Go to activity and select the message box. Check it has been stored. Let me check. If you see, I'm Sunday. Alright, so this is all about arguments. Arguments are very helpful when we uh, send data from one workflow to another workflow. Okay, in same way you can reuse your workflow and you can send data to many workflows. Alright, very helpful. Thank you guys. That is all about arguments. In the next chapter we might work with string manipulation. Okay, we work with strings.